Hey everybody, welcome to this week's podcast for the second time. I just realized that I switched out an audio interface and forgot to set my OBS settings back and just recorded 3/4 of this week's podcast with no audio. So I'm going to start again in the sweltering heat and try to go through this one more time and try to keep the original enthusiasm of the first way around. So please excuse me this time if it seems like I'm skipping over anything, because I probably just feel like I'm repeating myself, because I am. Anyway, strap in and let's do this again. First up, there's a new fix for the Virtual Boy ribbon issue, this time made by Sega Sonic Fan. And there was a new ribbon that was released last year that was essentially kind of a recreation of the original, but then you would just have to solder it into the places of where the original would go rather than just sticking them on top. I'm oversimplifying that process. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And this one uses a dual right-angle board, and you have to solder that in place and then just connect them with ribbon cables. So this one's still kind of new, so I'm not sure what the installers have been saying about this versus the other one. The other one, most people's feedback was that it worked perfect. It was just a little tricky to get the soldering done if you hadn't done it before, and I haven't really heard feedback about this one yet. The full kit's $40, and if you want it installed, Sega Sonic Fan could also do it for an additional $35. And, you know, it looks like a pretty neat solution, and if nothing else, it probably is just a good alternative depending on what you're more comfortable with. You know, if you're using flex cable all the time and you're used to soldering tiny little bits, I don't think it would matter. I think they're both probably going to be good. So definitely check that out if your Virtual Boy needs repair. And also, Sega Sonic Fan has a few other things that he just listed. A sync cleaner for arcade PCs and a Unigen converter that makes a Genesis controller compatible with a bunch of retro computers and consoles with 9-pin D-sub ports on it. I'll probably get into those at a different time when they're more relevant to a different topic, but wanted to mention them because they're all available now. So check out the post by Ronnie if you need more information, and the link to Sega Sonic Fan site is right there. Next, Alex just posted a really detailed written review of the Striker DC gamepad, the Dreamcast replacement controller, and I really like the amount of detail that he went into and really compared every part of it. I'd heard a couple of reviews of it, and I had a couple of friends just give me their basic feedback, and overall it seems to be hit or miss depending on what controller you're used to and you know, how hardcore of a game player are you. But I did appreciate Alex's point of view and all of the different details being pointed out. I especially liked the little things like the buttons are closer together on the Striker than the OEM, give it an easier way to get to all the buttons if you're playing a really fast fighting game or something like that. It's interesting too, because one of the biggest complaints of the Dreamcast controller was the D-pad, and it does seem a little bit better on the Striker, but I've yet to really try it myself. I still have one in a box unopened, so maybe when I get to the mode video I'll finally be able to use that and try it out. But overall, it was a really great review. You know, regardless of your opinion of the Striker DC, this is certainly a good way to put a lot of different aspects of it into perspective, so I highly recommend checking this out. And reading through it did make me realize how much I miss doing written reviews like this. I enjoy videos, but like, I don't know, the written stuff was always my favorite if I had to pick one, and I guess in a perfect world I would do both. I would have a written review like this to go along with a video review, but there aren't enough hours in the week for that, let alone in the day. So for now, just enjoy Alex's written review of the Retro Fighters controller, and hopefully it'll paint a clearer picture for anybody that was on the fence about buying it. Stika just posted a review of the game Dune for both the MS-DOS and the Sega CD, which is kind of like a combination of a point-and-click adventure game and a real-time strategy game. And while it didn't have as much impact on gaming as the second Dune game did, this certainly was something that, you know, Stika calls it a forgotten masterpiece, and it might be. I actually have never played it yet, which is weird because I loved the movie growing up. So I'm kind of interested to check it out. Overall, Stika says the PC version is by far the better version of it, but the Sega CD version's good, and it does have some voice acting, which is kind of cool. So it's not like, you know, you're not going to have a terrible experience on the Sega CD, but he definitely recommends the PC version. So maybe I'll fire up the 486 core on the Mister and give it a try. Also, for any Dune fans or people who have heard of the movie or anything like that, kind of interesting, but I saw the movie first, the one from the 80s, and I loved it, and then eventually I ended up reading the books at some point. Not all of them, but more than one. And I completely understand why people who read the books first hate the movie. Because I saw the movie first, I actually really enjoyed both of them, so, you know, no love lost for either. But because of Stika's interview, because of his review, it finally gave me the kick in the pants I needed to watch the 2000 TV adaptation of it, which was both better than the movie and not as good. You know, there was no Jean-Luc Picard in it riding a worm, but at the same time, it was way more accurate to the story. So I'll finally get to Children of Dune, the follow-up soon, hopefully this week, and then there's a new movie coming out afterwards. So definitely a fan of the whole series and the world of that. But in part of this, I got to sit down and make the original game something that I actually give some serious time to, and hopefully I'll find a creative way to play it. There's a brand new RGB mod for the Colecovision that tries to fix some of the issues that previous RGB mods have. This is not a continuation of the other mods. This is completely from scratch, designed by Fallon at Atari Age. And the original RGB mods, while they're good, I wouldn't call them bad or anything like that, but they did have a few issues. And the major one, in my opinion, is that you couldn't quite calibrate it right without using an oscilloscope because of the way the ColecoVision chips work. No two could be exactly the same, so you'd want to double check the levels. Also, there's some issues with colors and how text are drawn. So it's, while it was good, it wasn't perfect, and this mod kind of steps in and tries to take care of all of that, where one board should work the same on all of them without needing tuning, and everything else should look correct. So it's my opinion that with stuff like this, if you're a huge ColecoVision fan, if it's your favorite console, yeah, sure, it's worth upgrading. Whereas if you just like the Coleco and you have one that's RGB modded already, I don't know if I would run out and swap it out for this one, especially if you already had it calibrated before or anything like that. And for anybody out there that tried to calibrate the other one by eye, it'll probably be fine on a CRT, but if you're sending too high a voltage video level into a video processor, I mean, that's not good at all. So I would just be careful with that if you have one of the original ones that wasn't properly tuned. But overall, I just really like to see love for some of the consoles that might not be as popular as some of the other ones. And I know the entire ColecoVision, community wants to light me on fire every time I say stuff like that. But the truth is, it wasn't as popular as many other consoles, so it doesn't get as much attention. And I'm really glad that there are people out there that still care about it and are still taking the time to do some really awesome stuff like this. If you want to make your own, you could order the board from OSH Park, and there's already a pre-filled DigiKey cart if anybody just wants to buy the parts. Fallon created an entire website dedicated to this project, so anybody that's interested in it, you could kind of check that out. Or if you just want to buy pre-made ones, you could buy them from Mobius Strip Tech. And also, I use this as an opportunity to update the ColecoVision page on the website, which was pretty outdated. And I added this mod as well as still kept links to the other ones, and I added the FPGA ColecoVision console, which I'd already talked about a few times here. I think it's still out of stock, which is the only reason I didn't update the page before this, but I did want to let people know that's an option, because with at least pretty good to excellent, depending on the console and everything else, FPGA emulation's really getting to be a viable option now. So if you're somebody that has a perfectly original Coleco and you don't really want to touch it, you want to just leave it as that, that piece of history, at least now you have an option to pick up something that kind of resembles it, could work with the controllers, and play original cartridges, which for many of us, that's a really important thing. If you want a true nostalgic experience, you got to plug that cartridge in, plug the original controllers in. So looks like it's a good year for ColecoVision fans, and please check out this in the other section on the website if you'd like more information on any of it. There have been a bunch more leaks from Nintendo that are everything from source code to games to special tools that were used for development. Modern Vintage Gamer did 2 awesome videos on it, so I highly recommend watching them for all the details. I posted a bunch of little things in this post for people that just prefer reading, as well as a mostly complete list of things that were dumped for both Super Nintendo and N64. Some of the notable things that I'd like to point out is source code for some of the most popular games, I was going to say on Super Nintendo, but in some cases ever made, really. Also were development tools for Star Fox as well as the Super FX chip, and Dylan Cuthbert himself even chimed in to talk about it, both both to confirm it's real and to be, I guess he was excited that he got to see this tool again that he hadn't seen, according to him, in almost 30 years. There's also a couple of prototypes of games with alternative music that I thought was pretty neat. One of them Star Fox, the other is Castlevania. So I embedded links to those if anybody wants to hear the alternative music to that. But overall, I would just check out both of MVG's videos because he's going to sum it up a lot better than I would. The Mega Everdrive Pro just got a firmware update that had some bug fixes, improved the FM sound core, and added the ability to apply IPS patches in the same folder as the ROMs, not in the patch folder, which could be really handy if you're somebody that's sorting through a bunch of different patches and you don't want to, or you don't remember which one's which. So it's kind of neat to have that as an option for it. Also, Crix listed something in the updates here that I don't quite know what they are, or I think more likely I do know what they are, but I've always just called them something else. He lists RAM cheats for both Genesis and Mega CD. So obviously I'm aware of things like Game Genie cheats and memory exploits and stuff like that, but is that what RAM cheats are? So can any of you smart folk please educate me? Maybe I do remember and it's just a million degrees in here and my brain is boiling, but it would be cool if anybody could remind me what that was. Or maybe it's something new that I actually haven't heard of. Who knows? That's certainly possible. But anyway, if you have the Mega Everdrive Pro, definitely just update to the latest firmware, because anytime Crix has a new product, he always seems to be really up on keeping the bugs ironed out quickly. And I mean, heck, he even still posts firmware updates for stuff he released years ago. So I would always just update and enjoy whatever features are added. There's another Mega Everdrive update this week, and this one comes from a third-party developer. Someone named Robert Hargreaves, sorry if I'm not saying that right, just created an interface that turns the Everdrive X7 and the Pro into a MIDI interface. So we've written a couple posts over the years about people who make dedicated equipment using the sound chips like the 2612 or 3438 to create music the same way it would sound through a Genesis, but with like a handheld device. And this essentially turns the Genesis into that. The Everdrive becomes a MIDI interface that you could plug into your computer, and then the Everdrive could activate the chips inside the Genesis, so you could essentially create music through the Genesis. I am always fascinated by stuff like this, and it is such a goal of mine to someday first take all of my music and turn it into MIDI files, which is definitely the biggest hurdle, and then going and trying to make basically Genesis music out of some of my songs. So I think stuff like this is probably what I'd use, because I already have a computer, an Everdrive, and a Genesis. So I don't know, it's pretty exciting to see tools like this. And if there's any people out there that make chiptunes or any kind of video game music, maybe this would be a big help to you. I'm actually wondering how somebody like Remute would take software like this. Are the tools he's already using, solid and better? Is this just a different way to do it, or improved? I probably should have asked him before doing this segment, but maybe I'll reach out and follow up and do a video just on the MIDI interface software itself one day. The Super Game Boy core for the FXPak and FXPak Pro has had 3 updates since the last time we talked about it. And one of the things that I noticed is Akari himself helped with one of the updates in this. So hopefully that means that this is getting closer to being an official firmware, because most people, I think, don't go hunting around for beta stuff. They just buy the cart, go to the website, get the latest firmware, and kind of just move on from there. So there's probably a whole bunch of people out there with FXPaks, or SD2SNESs as they used to be called, that don't even realize that you could play Game Boy games through the Super Game Boy 2 core right on that without the use of a real Super Game Boy or anything else. Also, there's a long list of fixes, so if you're interested in what changes were made and what updates were done, please check out this post. But if you just want to get the latest revision and keep playing your games, just check out the first post. And heck, there might even, by the time you hear this, be yet another update. So, thanks so much to anybody that's working on this. I just think it's such a really neat addition to the FXPak. Smoke Monster and I just did an interview with Gabriel Pyron, the person who did those amazing color restoration hacks for the Sega Genesis. And for anybody that's unaware of his work, a lot of arcade games that were ported over to the Genesis don't match the colors quite right. And some of it's not that big a deal. Other things look quite different, and a very substantial difference. And Gabriel over the years has gone back and hacked a bunch of these games to have their color palettes match the arcade versions more closely. And some of them, like Outrun, I don't even play the original anymore. I usually play his hack just because I really like the way it looks. But he's done a bunch of other work as well. He patched some Genesis exclusive games that were never in arcades just to kind of update the colors. And his Final Fight CD patch was even showcased in John Linneman's documentary about Final Fight, which I was really happy to see that because, as I said, just a giant fan of his work. It was funny because Smoke Monster was originally invited on there in case there was a language barrier, but there wasn't. I mean, I thought everything went well and I could certainly understand everything, but I'm really glad Smoke was there because he and I have both been such huge fans of Gabriel's work for a long time. So it was cool that we got to do this together. And also, I've mentioned many times over the years that doing these interviews are some of my favorite things about being part of RetroRGB. And while I love doing them, I always really prefer in-person interviews. It's just something about the Skype delay. It's still awesome, but it just doesn't feel as genuine as sitting in a room with somebody. So that's why I really haven't done as many interviews lately, is because I was hoping to find ways to meet up with all these people that I'm fans of in person. But with everything going on, it's not happening anytime soon. So I think I'm going to go back to trying to do a lot more interviews. I've also kind of been burning myself a bit out on the videos. So maybe I'm going to try to do alternating weeks. So interview one Monday, high production video the next Monday, vice versa, and still do the same 3 videos a week I've been doing for almost a year now, maybe a little less than that, but yeah, anyway. But hopefully there's a lot more awesome people that you all will want to hear from, because there's certainly a lot more amazing people in the gaming scene that I want to talk to. So stay tuned for a bunch more interviews with some pretty interesting characters coming up. This Friday, July 31st, Limited Run Games is going to be selling 10 packs of Sega Saturn and Sega CD replacement cases. The price is going to be $80, so after shipping, I guess it'll probably end up being about $10 a case, which certainly isn't cheap, but it's also not unfair either. And I guess they said the reason they're selling them in 10 packs now is because they had problems with them breaking during shipping, so they figured out a way to pack them so they're going to be much safer, which I guess makes sense. Now, there's 500 units for order, so I guess 5,000 total in packages of 10 each. So I don't know what that means as far as availability. I don't know if there are that many people out there who really want these. Certainly if you're somebody that makes homebrew and want to sell your own game or something like that, that would make sense, especially for Sega CD because you don't need a mod chip. But if you're just replacing your collection, everybody's opinion on this is totally different. Mine is just simply that unless my case is actually falling apart when I try to open it, I'm fine just using an older beat up case. But if you're somebody that really, you like that attention to detail, you want a mint condition case, maybe, try to figure out exactly when they're going on sale. It's usually 10 a.m., but check their website and just get it right away, because who knows? I don't know if there's this much demand for it, but maybe it'll turn out to be like an old school limited run game sale where they go on sale at 10 a.m. and sell out by 10:01. But either way, check out the link if you need some jewel cases for Saturn and Sega CD. And I know a lot of people had asked me about these over the years, so if you're one of them, now's your chance to get it. Pre-orders for the Analog Pocket are going live this coming Monday, August 3rd. The price is going to be $200 plus shipping, which, as we know, could range from $20 to $90 depending on where you live. And the target ship date is going to be May of 2021, but with everything going on in the world, I would just expect it to be later. Not a shot at Analog, it's just the truth about what's going on in the world right now. There's a couple of details for it as well. It's going to ship with just support for the Nintendo consoles, so Game Boy and Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color, but you could also purchase Game Gear, Neo Geo Pocket Color, and Lynx adapters for $30 each, and there's some discrepancy on whether or not they're going to be available at the time of launch. I'm sure they're going to be aiming for it, but there's no guarantee. Some of them say May of 2021, and others just say release date 2021. There's also a screen protector for $16 and the HDMI dock for $100. And once again, I don't know if they're going to be released the same day or anything like that. So, as usual, it's not cheap, but it's also not unfair considering what it is that you're getting. And And it's my opinion that if you're somebody who has a bunch of cartridges from old consoles that you want to play, or old handheld consoles that you want to play, depending on your setup, this might be the best choice. So let's just say hypothetically you only have Nintendo-based handheld cartridges and consoles to play. This might not be the most cost-effective because you can get a backlit Game Boy Advance and an Everdrive for pretty cheap. Especially if you're using your own cartridges, you wouldn't need the Everdrive then. But if you also have a Game Gear, that means it definitely needs a cap replacement. No doubt in my mind. Even if it's not quite there yet, you need to do it. Everybody needs to do that on their Game Gear. And then, do you want to deal with the original screen or do you want a screen replacement? And the Neo Geo Pocket Color and the Lynx are both way more reliable than the Game Gear as far as they're not ticking time bombs, at least yet. But both of them could really, really benefit from a screen upgrade. So if you have all four, or I guess, more than that if you count all the different Nintendo ones, and you want to do screen mods, and you might need ROM carts or something, then the Analog Pocket suddenly becomes a really good value. There's a bunch of cool features about it, which I don't really want to comment on until I see it myself, because I don't want to just regurgitate marketing statements, but it does look like it's going to be pretty awesome. It just really, just like all their other consoles, depends on what you already own, what you need, and what your goal is on all of this stuff. Just some small criticism here, because no one ever seems to ever criticize Analog but me, so it feels like it's balls in my court. It's the only one that does it. They're claiming it's not going to play ROMs, but I'm pretty sure this has got to be one of those, like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we totally didn't release our own jailbreak, even though we're the only people physically able to do something like this, and allow you to play ROMs like that, because I think it would be a huge turnoff if you had to spend a lot of money on this thing, and then buy another ROM cart if you wanted to play homebrew and a lot of the hacks that are out there. For me personally, the quality of life updates to Link's Awakening, just so many small little things that make the game better. But also, the interesting thing is third-party core support. So it looks like Analog's trying to pull some of the FPGA community again to develop on their platform. And the first problem that I have with this, which is just, this is not emotion, this is just fact here. Most Analog consoles are made to have just enough to not let everybody that wants one get one. And I understand it's a perfectly good business strategy. It's how limited run games built their business. I totally get that. You want to create that sense of urgency. You want to have your product out of stock, so when it goes in stock, people rush to get it. And like I said, from a company standpoint, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're trying to entice developers to spend probably thousands of hours porting their cores and their stuff over to a product that, historically speaking, probably won't be that available. I mean, only the Genesis one, the Mega SG, is still readily available. Nothing else Analog makes is. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Also, I don't think they're going to be open sourcing their cores. So a lot of people in the FPGA community, the MiSTer community, are kind of offended by this whole premise of, and I don't mean to speak for people, I'm just kind of repeating what I'm hearing a lot, is that, you're asking developers to open up their stuff and to essentially make your product worth a lot more money, because now people are giving you development stuff on it, but you're not really giving anything back. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's just part of a new press release that isn't out yet that they're going to announce later. Just based on all the facts that we have now, I just don't see this as being a smart choice for people to develop on, because you're just developing for a closed platform that, and you're essentially giving away your time. Whereas MiSTer, the DE10 Nano has almost never been out of stock, little bits here and there. It's going to be readily available for a while longer, because Intel's roadmap usually lets stuff like that stay out for a while. And it's part of a community where everybody's kind of, like there's a whole bunch of people all working for a similar goal. So I don't know if that, maybe I'm wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope this thing is readily available. Everyone could buy one. I hope Analog makes it an amazing development platform and everybody's happy. I mean, I would love to be wrong about this. I don't see it. So, once again, I seem to be the only person that ever questions anything analog does. Every post, from major publications to smaller ones, just treat every press announcement like it's the second coming of something, and it's crazy to me, and especially because I am technically biased. I am a big fan of Kevin's work, so the fact that I'm still sort of biased, that I'm always going to support Kev, I'm still the only one talking about possibly not positive things, maybe even just neutral. And also, you gotta love, I always give props to Chris Tabor, always, for his marketing. I've never seen anybody other than Apple create so much hype for an announcement that announces a pre-order. It wasn't even a product announcement. It was an announcement about an announcement that had people going crazy on Monday. So absolute props to that. Not many people, if anybody else in the retro gaming scene, has been able to pull that off. So big props for that one. A developer named Retro Enhancer has just shown off a widescreen NES emulator, and stuff like this is why I really love software emulation. I believe it works by having the emulator scan what's to the left and to the right of the current screen, but only, at the moment at least, only activating enemies in the current screen. So any kind of AI or anything like that is only in the active area. And I believe he's looking into different ways of fixing this, but this would allow you to still use it at the moment without worrying about most games being totally broken. And it's my opinion that if you're playing on a widescreen display, this is just so much cooler than having black bars on the side. It's just one of those really neat things that kind of, I don't know if I'd say it enhances the experience, but it changes it, and I think I would prefer playing this way. And even if he was never able to add support for the enemies outside of the active area, I think it's really cool. I'd also love to know if anything like this was possible on things like the Mister, I guess I don't think it would be on real hardware, but I just know there's so many people that play on flat panels that stuff like this would be a really neat thing. So if you're a NES developer and you know anything about this stuff, please chime in, but I think this is a very cool way to play NES games on a flat widescreen TV. Well, that's it for this week. Hopefully it all flowed naturally, even though I had to redo every segment except the last two. So I feel real dumb about that. I haven't made a mistake like that in a long time. I might get through like an opening, like a 1 minute or less thing and then play it back, but it's been a long time since I've actually done some work and not realized something was off like that. So very embarrassing, but it does happen. Anyway, as always, thanks so much to everybody who watches and listens, and of course, thanks so much to everybody that supports on Floatplane and Patreon, because without you, none of this stuff would be able to happen. The weekly videos, the interviews, all the crazy behind-the-scenes work I'm involved in. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you next week.